we had we've been expecting and worried and concerned about what happened mostly yesterday, but it's actually been happening for a while. Not for any particular problem, although this is the first time in 30 years that both the Jewish and Muslim and Christian holidays happened at the same time. And this was a concern for the King of Jordan. U.S. Secretary of State came to Israel and Palestine to make sure that because last year we also had similar situation, and there was similar Israeli storming of the mosque, and so they didn't want that to happen again. And unfortunately, it happened, despite all the good faith effort by local and regional leaders and international leaders. Um, I don't know exactly why it happened, um, but a number of things have been brewing for some time. The the current government of Israel is run by a prime minister who belongs to a radical right wing party. And about 2 weeks ago, he lost one of his coalition members. And so his government is basically on extremely razor thin. It's not even a majority, it's 60-60 actually. If everybody votes, he can barely stay in power. And the more religious, the more radical elements of his party have been pressuring, or at least he has been um, he's been hesitant to block off the attempts by the religious individuals in Israel who are trying to somehow, um, from their point of view, repossess control over the mosque area. Now, for historical reason, Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the entire old city of Jerusalem, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means nobody is allowed to change the status of that site because of its role in being part of World Heritage history. In addition to that, um, different powers who have ruled or controlled Jerusalem have always accepted what we call the status quo agreement. And the status quo agreement, as the name mentions, is supposed to accept the status quo of whoever has whatever they have. They have a right to continue to have and control it. Now, just for history, Al Aqsa Mosque has been controlled, run by Muslims for 1,200 years continuously. The only exception was a short period during the Crusader control, and that didn't last very long. Um, Now, the Jews say, yeah, but this used to belong to us even before that, 5,000 years ago, when God gave it to Moses or whatever, or to Abraham. Now, the problem is today's world is not run by the Bible, although a Bible is an important document, or by 3,000-year history. It's run by agreements and contracts and UN resolutions and membership in the international community. And the Israelis don't seem to accept that, although they are forced to, not that because they want to. And they're trying to say that, okay, this is a Muslim place, but it's also the Jews should be allowed to pray, and that's also rejected by the Muslims. Now, in 2014, Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel at the time, and the king of Jordan, along with the U.S. Secretary John Kerry, reached an understanding which said in a very simple terms, Al-Aqsa Mosque is for Muslims to pray and for everyone else to visit. So if people want to visit the holy site when people are not praying, fine, they can visit. That's it's a historical place and people like to visit. But the idea of the Jews visiting Al-Aqsa Mosque is not to visit, but they're trying to reclaim somehow possession. And that's where the problems happen. Now, this year, as in past years, but this year more, Some of the radical Jews have been saying, we want to bring in a lamb to Al-Aqsa Mosque and kill it and sacrifice it to kind of a reminiscent of what the Jews did in, in decade, or not decade, millennials ago. And of course, that fired up the Muslims, and they were worried. And so they literally stayed overnight, and they were trying to stop the attempt of the radicals to enter into Al-Aqsa Mosque. And in the early morning hours, Israeli soldiers literally stormed the location, arrested some 500 people, broke the glass of the mosque. 120 people were injured. They just literally beat up at least 3 journalists very badly, even though they're well documented as journalists. Um, so that created a backlash of many countries, including the US, including the UN, including the EU, including Saudi Arabia, and others, all criticized Israel for what it had done. Uh, Al-Aqsa is the third holiest mosque in Islam, so it's a very, very holy place. And the way it was treated and defiled and walked all over, in their shoes and everything. In the mosque, people take their shoes before they enter, and the Israeli soldiers in their boots just literally walked in and turned the place into a havoc. So yes, that's what happened.
And at this point, what is the concern about this escalating into a repeat of some of the violence that we saw from Israel last May in 2021 when there was a similar situation?
There is a lot of effort by the Egyptian government to ensure that this does not happen. Hamas leadership has been meeting continuously and offering, um, through the Egyptians, some type of understanding that if all the prisoners are released and the Israelis commit not to do what is called the extrajudicial killings or assassinations, then the Hamas will not escalate. And that seems to be what is happening now. We don't know exactly what the understanding details are, but the Egyptian leadership is putting a lot of effort to de-escalate. And Israelis basically did what they wanted to do. They proved their symbolic idea that they control the area, even though they had to beat up and hurt a lot of people. Uh, so it's almost like a game, and the Israelis think, we showed up. Who's the boss? Who's in charge? And almost high school childish in a way, the way they treat a very holy place. But anyway, they did it in the early morning hours, thinking that nobody will be watching, nobody will see. And by noon, they were in saying, "Oh, here everybody's praying and everything's back to order." But people don't forget, and pictures and videos don't forget.
And since then, since it occurred, have there been sort of mass rallies or mass
There
protests?
are there are rallies in many countries. In Amman, where I'm in, they had a rally last night, and actually in the mosque itself, last night they had a small demonstration or protest of the people who were there. There are rallies different places, and in many West Bank and Gaza, and even in Palestinian citizens of Israel have been also holding demonstrations. But if you wanted to know whether it's escalating or not, it's a bit too early to tell whether we are beginning a new wave of protests or whether it will quiet down. We don't know. It's hard to say.
And I wonder, so you mentioned a little bit of the reaction of other countries as well. And how does this play potentially, could be a thorn in the side of Israel as it's embarking continually on the campaign of normalizing relations with the other Arab states?
You know, I've been watching that, and I've been trying to see if the Emiratis and the Bahrainis would make a statement of any kind. I haven't seen anything. I don't know. I think the Moroccans did, but I haven't seen anything from the Emirates or Bahrain. But that's the Arab League, which represents everybody, spoke very strongly, made a very strong statement. And yeah, I think the normalization is more of an economic pact than anything else, and it's a way for the Emirates to have a better relation with the U.S. through the Israelis.
Right. So in the process, they're basically, they'll issue sort of like these statements, but they're not actually changing necessarily their relationship with Israel, in spite of.
Yeah, I look. The Emirates did not issue a statement. The Egyptians did, and the Jordanians did, and the Saudis did, and the Arab League did. Um, but I'm not sure it goes further than just words. The professional unions in Jordan demanded the government of Jordan to expel the Israeli ambassador, but it's not going to happen. But things are, I mean, it was very nasty what happened, very upsetting to many people. But then, I don't know. It's Israelis do these things and then they um, bring down the temperature a little bit until the next round. So I think also there is an element of revenge in what happened yesterday because of the Israelis who were killed about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think the Israeli public actually reveled in the pictures of seeing Palestinians being beaten up because it makes them feel like, okay, so our government is taking revenge, and that's also sad.
Alice, so you mentioned a little bit about Hamas, the comments they've been making through the Egyptians. What has been the response of the PA to that?
The PA is actually holding a very important emergency meeting Sunday night, and they've been speaking out. Nothing of substance, really, but yeah, that's all.
Well, thank you. And I guess I would have just one final comment. I wonder if you could provide some insight into it. It would be, the attack comes, of course, during Ramadan, and I wonder how this is being interpreted across Muslim society in Palestine and across the Muslim world. Israel does this all the time, as you mentioned, committing these attacks during Ramadan. But do you think that then doing this in the third holiest site during Ramadan is going to potentially spark, something more significant?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I don't know if it will, but yes, I mean, the as you said, this one idea that both in Ramadan and in Holy Mosque is a no, putting their finger in the nose of Muslims, saying, "We don't care what you think." It's very, very sad that this is happening. But I don't know. The Israelis have the Western countries behind them, supporting them, and they can get away with things that the Russians don't get away with in Ukraine.
Right, and I think with that, it'll be interesting to see the American response to it.
Exactly,
Whether
exactly.
the U.S. cares at all, considering that there was some recent movement of the U.S. going and potentially trying to ease things. But yeah, like you said, I think we'll have to see what the U.S. will say. But I'm sure that'll
They
be
issued a statement today. I don't know if you saw it.
okay.
Calling on the respect of the status quo, and nothing of no actionable action, just statements. But anyway, yeah,
Great.
that's all.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time, and I really appreciate it. And
Good luck.
thank you. Goodbye.